Yes, Ambuja, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you connecting from different parts of the world. A very warm welcome to the 13th edition of the Chennai Storytelling Festival. This is the sixth of the 12 storytelling sessions for adults. And I am Ambuja Valli. You can call me Ambuja, whichever is easier to you, will be the host for this particular event. We have been listening to lovely stories in the past sessions, and now I'm looking forward to listening to the 5 lovely stories from all of you. So let's jump into the stories. The first story for the day is from Regina Ress, all the way from New Mexico, the United States of America. Well, I was doing a little search online, like what the names mean, because it always interests me what everyone's name means. And for Regina, the Wikipedia told me the ruling queen or the reigning queen. And I totally agree to it because I have seen her ruling the stage when she was here in Chennai in person during one of her storytelling festivals pre-COVID. I'm glad, Regina, I was able to listen to you then, and I'm looking forward to listening to you today. Over to you, Regina. Please introduce yourself and tell us a story.
Well, hi, Ambu. Nice to see you again. I see some very familiar faces sitting out there. Hello, everybody that I know. Hello, everybody I don't know. Yeah, one other thing about Regina, of course, it's Latin. So it's all over the place. But I'm pretty sure its root is Sanskrit. And because I was talking to a Tibetan Rinpoche once about my son's name, which is REA, and he was telling me all about the Sanskrit root of REA and Arya, and that it's the root of Raja and Rani and all kinds of things, and Reagan in German. And I went, wait, Regina's got to be the same root. Because, because in Sanskrit, he said it was exalted one, and then it kind of, so there you go. I love names too. What's your name mean? I'm sorry. What does your name mean?
Okay, my name actually means it's a creeper made of lotuses. Rather, my father named me because there's a name of a goddess. So that way, but literally it means it's a creeper or a garland made of flowers. That's what it means.
I love it. I love it. Yes, I think names are the first story we carry. Our names are the first story we carry, for better and sometimes for worse. Well, my story for tonight is not about my name, but maybe it is because in keeping with one of the themes of this festival this year, I want to tell a story. It's a personal story about what I call a watershed moment in my life. And when I actually said, okay, now it's my turn. This is my life. So probably connects with Regina somehow, I'm sure. I'm going to preface it and give it its context because I don't know that any of you have been to New York. Some of you have probably, but it's a New York story. There's a very old, very historic neighborhood in New York. It's called Greenwich Village. And some of you may have heard of it. It's originally what was on the land there. It was a Lenni Lenape village that the Native Americans were there. There were small rivers and streams flowing down to the Hudson River, which borders the neighborhood on the west, and it's got good soil for growing crops. It's a good place for a village. So we're talking about lower Manhattan. So that center of New York, and most people only know Midtown Manhattan. So I'm talking about the very bottom of Manhattan, about 2 miles from the bottom. And when the Dutch established their trading post at the south end of Manhattan, and by the way, Manhattan, the name Manhattan means island in Lenni Lenape, and indeed, Manhattan is an island. So the Dutch showed up around 1625, and they called their town that they put at the very bottom, New Amsterdam. And the bottom is on the bay that goes out to the ocean. And then the island has two major rivers on either side. So they called it New Amsterdam. And where the Lenni Lenape people had been, a little village grew. It was kind of like the country place for the Dutch, for people to go. It was 2 miles north of the city. And the city was below the wall, which the Dutch built to keep the Native Americans out. And if any of you know what Wall Street is, the financial capital of the US, and I don't know if it's the world, but that's where the World Trade Center was. At Wall Street, that was the wall to the city that the Dutch built. And speaking of names, you see. So the British showed up about 40 years later. And they got it in an exchange with the Dutch, and New Amsterdam became New York. And the little town became Greenwich Village. So the village, as those of us who know it fondly call it, has an amazing history, as you might imagine, because it was colonial. It's got 400 years of history, so that may not sound old for those of you who are in India, but for the United States, it's older than the United States by far. So it's been there since 1625. There's a whole, so the village became the country place that people from down in the city could go. But it became, over some decades, it became a mecca for artists, musicians, painters, writers, it became the mecca. In fact, there was a Broadway musical called Wonderful Town, and it is set in Greenwich Village. There's a whole song about Greenwich Village, which I could sing you, but I won't. So let me just say that at this point in history, however, it's one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. I call it Hollywood on the Hudson. But I landed there in 1971. And it was a rundown, old part of town. It had a lot of old original buildings, and still does, because they are landmarked. Okay, so they can't do anything to it, at least externally. But it was pretty funky in a lot of very interesting ways. But I landed there, and I got my little apartment. And what I want to tell you is how I got it, and what that apartment meant to me and means to me to this day, because I'm there about half the year still. This, I said to my two friends over on the east side, this is what the apartment looks like. This. I had holding in my hand a 3-inch chunk of crumbling white plaster. No, to be more precise, holding in my hand, I had a chunk of filthy crumbling plaster. It was a piece of the wall of the apartment, a piece I picked up off the grimy linoleum that was covering the floor of the kitchen. I was being offered an apartment, a cheap one, in Greenwich Village in 1971. You couldn't get them. I mean, there wasn't anything available, but I talked for a real estate guy for about half an hour, and he finally said, well, yes, I actually have one. So he was interviewing me, obviously. Took him a while to say, yeah, well, yeah, maybe. This is what the apartment looks like, I said. So my two buddies, Dal and Dean, they looked at it. Look. I held out the chunk of crumbling plaster. What do you think? I said, should I take it? I don't know. I mean, the whole place is a mess. It's a wreck. And they said I could have it, but I had to fix it up myself. Take it, they said. Are you kidding? Take it. It's in Greenwich Village. You can fix it up. We'll help you. We'll help you. It's cheap, Regina. It's in the West Village, Regina. Take it. So I did. I said yes. The real estate people, or the owners, the landlords, they put in a sink. There'd only been a sink. They put in a new sink, and they put in a shower in the kitchen. Okay. they put in a new stove and a refrigerator. So there were the little sink, there was shower, the stove, and the refrigerator in the kitchen, and all the plaster that was on the floors. I signed an agreement. It was a rental agreement, not an actual lease as such. It's a rental agreement. I'm statutory tenant. I still have the yellowed agreement. It's my thing, and I've got it stashed. So I took that 3-room, tiny, teeny apartment, 300 square feet. Figure it out. It's about 10 by 30. It's a walk up, but it's only 3 flights. So it's kept me healthy, you see, because I had to go up 3 flights or down 3 flights to get out of the building. But the building is 6 floors, so those people had a lot more than me. The shower's in the kitchen, and it's got a WC. Do you know what a WC is? It's the toilet. The toilet was actually inside the apartment. I mean, I had friends in those days who had to go into the hall to go to the bathroom. Because you see, these were old tenements. These are cheap housing built for immigrants back around 1890 to 1900. And the plumbing went in long after the buildings were built. But this little place had a WC. That is the toilet with a door. So it wasn't in the middle of the kitchen, but it was really. It had a toilet. No more midnight runs into the hall to pee, you see. I knew people who did not have toilets. The WC was inside the apartment, and I had a shower, a really good shower too. It still is good. And this place with its crumbling walls and sagging ceilings, which I saw fall down the following year, had views, because there was an empty lot right next to the building turned into a big playground. Because most of those buildings, 10 feet from your window is another window, but this one had this big playground because in 1929, when they built the I-80 subways, they came down the avenue and turned to go into Brooklyn right there. So they tore down the building that was up against my building. I had a view, southeast, southwest, south, all of Lower Manhattan. All of Lower Manhattan, because I was at a corner, and there are 2 very broad streets, and then across from them are low-rise buildings, because they're all these old buildings, and none of them in those days could be higher than 6 floors, because that's how the water could get up, was the water pressure, and it could only go up 6 floors. So all those old buildings are only 6 floors. So I had the view. And when I got into that apartment, they were finishing the World Trade Center. They had not finished the World Trade Center. So from that window, I saw the World Trade Center go up. And from the window, I saw the World Trade Center go down on 9/11. But that's another story. But that was a watershed moment. Anyway, I was finally getting a place of my own, not a shared space with a husband, who, as we tried to figure out how to keep him out of Vietnam. That was in the 60s. Huh? Not a room rented from friends when I left that husband. It was not a basement apartment in a virtually abandoned building on East 10th Street, where my boyfriend and I had been living, in a cement room, which probably had been the original washroom and bathroom of this listing this way. When you walked up the stairs, you were walking up this way, in another tenement on the Lower East Side. This was going to be my space. And it was represented by that dirty chunk of plaster in my hand that I showed my friends. This would be my space, my apartment, in this crumbling tenement building in the West Village. In the West Village, baby. It was something. Now, most of the other tenants when I moved in were old Italians. They were from immigrant families. There were a few in the building that had been born in the building and had lived there their whole lives. The neighborhood was mostly Italian in those days, and you could get the greatest food. You could get fresh mozzarella, still hot from the pot. I mean, dripping with the, it was so good. You can't really get that anymore, but there it was in those days. And a lot of musicians were living in Greenwich Village then. Greenwich Village had been this mecca for artists. I mean, starting probably in the 1840s, the poet Edgar Allan Poe lived there. He wrote a very famous poem, some of you may know it, The Raven. It was written about 3 blocks from where my apartment is. But by the time I got there, it had been this wave of musicians, all these little clubs. So for example, Bob Dylan lived in Greenwich Village. And I think we overlapped just a little bit. And John Lennon and Yoko Ono lived in Greenwich Village before they moved uptown. But of course, Bob Dylan and John Lennon did not live in an old walk-up tenement. They had some very nice little houses because they're old townhouses in that neighborhood. They're all landmarked. So they're these beautiful old houses from probably the 19th century. But this, and it was literally a wreck. I mean, there was so much plaster on the floor. This was my chance to start the life I had been wanting most of my life as a bohemian actress in Greenwich Village, New York. So I was never a beatnik, and the beatniks were in Greenwich Village. I was not really a hippie, and the hippies were, a lot of them were in Greenwich Village, but all the, you know, the rock and roll and folk artists and all those people. But I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be an old school bohemian, that is counterculture, living downtown. So what did I do with that apartment? I was instructed by my theater techie friends to take all the old top layer of plaster off the walls, the layer that was half off anyway, was on the floor, and take it off the brown coat, take it all down to the brown coat, which is the underlayer of plaster. And then they said, you paper mache the walls. I said, what? They said, you paper mache the walls. That's what you do. It'll work, believe us. And they were really good theater technician type people. They knew what they were talking about. So I did. By hand, I took off all that plaster that was still on the walls, down to the plaster coat that was not crumbling, and I paper mache'd it. And that lasted for decades. I covered the underlayer with the paper mache, but one room I discovered was a wall of bricks. They were handmade, old handmade bricks with 4x4s. Really, I mean, incredible beams, but going this way, so that the 4x4s were between the columns of bricks. And in those days, people were doing that, going down to the bricks and having a brick wall. So I had this gorgeous brick wall. And I tore up by hand 5 layers of grimy, battered linoleum that was covering the floor. And it was a nice, perfectly good wooden floor in the kitchen. But what was there were these 5 layers, literally, of old linoleum. And I put them in bags and carried them out and threw them in the garbage. I was doing it all myself. I had the time in those days, and I had the energy in those days. So there were no electric outlets. Well, there was one electric outlet in the kitchen, okay? But all 3 of these tiny rooms had overhead lights with pull chains. So my friend said, okay, go to the hardware store and get a double socket. You screw it in one side you put a light bulb, and the other side you put an extension cord, and that's what I did. I ran the extension cord across the ceiling and down the wall so I could plug in my record player. Remember record players? But that's how I got my electricity. And about 10 years later, they had to do a little renovation. They gave me electricity. They gave me real electric outlets. So that was my apartment. Furniture? Well, in those days, milk was delivered in wooden milk crates, and they would be left on the sidewalk until I guess the milk people came and picked them up. But the game in those days was to go find wooden milk crates and make furniture. So I had 28 wooden milk crates that I picked up randomly on the streets, and made my furniture. Painted them. They looked really good. I still have 3 of them in the apartment. and I had built it. I had built my apartment, mine. It was a space, my space, a place in which and from which I would create my life. As the great English writer Virginia Woolf wrote, what a woman needs is a room of her own. I finally had one, and I still do.
Wow, that is so heartwarming, Regina. The way you ended, the woman needs a home. I could relate to that so much. It was so lovely listening to you. I mean, the way you started explaining the geography of the place, I felt I was there in Lower Manhattan. I can see, how it transformed. And it's always like when you tell us stories, like you're holding us, our hands, and taking us back to that timeline. And we were with you, like how you were creating the apartment. And the moment when you said the same window through which you saw it come up and then it go down, it was, I don't know, it was a goosebump moment. So it is fantastic. Yeah, it felt the way you build the apartment. I would really want to come and see those wooden, the milk crates, which you still have, which you used as furniture back then. So
they're very good, I mean, they're not these little plastic things we use now. They're good wooden milk crates. So, they even were the bed. They supported the mattress, that and a plank. They're very useful. I recommend milk crates.
I'm sure that sometime in future when we come there, would like to watch those nice wooden strong furnitures. Thank you, Regina. Yes, opening it to the audience. Anyone wants to share? Let me remove my spotlight.
If I can say something, I was going to leave because it's midnight in Florida, but then when you started speaking, Regina, I said, no, I have to stay because I was really, so you have taken me to 12:30, past midnight here with your story, and I'm happy I did. It is such it's such a slice of life of, history, the history of this country, and how all of these lives have converged. And to me, it spoke directly because my mother-in-law lived in Old Greenwich, for 50 years, and she was born in New York. And, we spent every summer in Greenwich. And then I've also lived in New Mexico, right? So where I also attended Tibetan Buddhist centers, which ultimately led me to India. So it is, it is such a strata of society and what you have lived through, the many phases of history that you have been through. I can only imagine. You have given us a little bit. I can only imagine all that you have been through. I could just glimpse a little bit through your story, and it just, thank you for sharing such richness, with so much tangible, tactile material there, for us to see these crumbling walls and how this space for a woman came to be. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm in Santa Fe. It's also 400 years old.
That's perfect. I've lived there, and yeah.
It's also built on what had been indigenous land. So I just made that connection. The two places were both in pueblos, essentially.
Thank you, Regina.
Yeah.
I lived in the East Village for many years.
Yeah.
A couple of locations, including 5th Street between A and B.
Oh God, you were on the other side of A. I lived on 10th between 1st and A. We couldn't, I was told never cross A.
Well, what you did was, you told us about your apartment and your feelings, which is sort of the background for your actual work as an artist and an educator.
Yeah.
So, sometime it'll be great to hear the story of your work as an artist and an educator. Maybe that's a book. But
Uh,
yeah, you've been an actress, a storyteller, an event producer, and at NYU you've been a professor so many years.
Still
So
am.
wonderful. And are you still producing events? Was it at the Provincetown Playhouse?
Yeah, it stopped during COVID and they finally brought it back, but just once a semester. I think Laura Sims and I are going to do the show in April.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And so that little theater is one of the historic places in Greenwich Village, but it wasn't landmarked. And when NYU bought it, they were going to tear it down and put a dorm there. And the neighborhood, the theater community went crazy because it's a very famous little theater in American theater history. So,
Anyway, it's really wonderful to hear about your apartment and the intellectual and the implication of the intellectual and artistic life that has gone along with it, and the activist life. So I appreciate you so much on all these levels.
well, thank you. I thought, what can I do that fits the theme? And I went, well, okay, here's a watershed moment where my life, which had been focused on other things, suddenly went, okay, now it's my turn. That's important in our lives. My turn. And it was built on those wooden milk crates. So
Thank you. To add to what Eric said, added to all, actress and everything, and also a civil engineer who built up her own home herself. So that also adds to your list of credibilities, Regina. Yes, Pratigya. Pratigya, you want to say something?
Hi, Regina. Lovely to hear you every single time. I think I'll have to log out now, but I just wanted to log in to listen to you. Couldn't miss you. I must say, you've given me a dream to build a room of my own. I don't know whether it'll happen, when it'll happen, if it'll happen, but you've sown a seed. Thank you so much for that.
oh, well, you're welcome. Read Virginia Woolf's A Room, is it A Room of One's Own? It's the title of her book. Yeah.
But and again, the room of your own or the apartment of your own was in the context of a scene, experimental theater, protest against the Vietnam War, all of it, which I was also a little bit of a part of, or I still feel I'm a part of, and I still feel you're a part of, whether it's the Vietnam War or the Gaza War or whatever war.
Yes, I am 2 blocks, I guess 3 blocks from the NYU campus. We have protests a lot over
Very good.
so there's a lot of stuff always going on.
Yeah, I relate to that moment in history, even though I wasn't there, because, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, the stories would be told at my mother-in-law's, and they were so rich. Like her name was Jane Milliken, and she started the Greenwich Forum. She started the Pocket People, which is like a puppeteer kind of theater that would just carry stories of peace everywhere. And so it was such a big moment. Thank you for contributing to that and speaking up, not staying quiet.
We all have to do what we know we can do. Just find whatever you can do for whatever reason and do it. Help people, help each other, help people, and help our planet. Help our planet.
Yes, and like you said, and help and that moment of your own can become this axle from which you can do all of this. You did take care of yourself so that you could take care of everyone. And I'm originally from Cuba, and our national hero Jose Marti, he said, "It is a great sin not to do what one is capable of doing."
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, even if it's just to come alongside somebody and be there with them, breathing with them. If that's what you can do it.
Thank you for that bit, Malini, when you said like we have to do what we're supposed to do. Thanks for that. And thanks for that lovely story, Regina. So you have given all of us a dream to build a room or a house of our own. Thanks for that. And now it's time to move to the next teller for the day. And the next teller for our day is Shalini. As I told you at the beginning, I have this interest towards understanding what the names mean. And for Shalini, what I got was Shalini means modesty, virtue. And I was doing a little bit of Instagramming to find out, what you people are actually doing. And in Shalini's, the interesting part was I got to see more of other tellers' videos than of herself. And immediately I could relate, okay, this teller is one who encourages everyone. And I'm so looking forward to listening to your story, Shalini. I think this is the first time I'm going to be listening to you. Thanks so much for being here. Please introduce yourself and share a story.
Thank you, Ambu. Thank you so much. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, like Ambu said, to all of you who have joined in on this wonderful Sunday morning here in India from all across the world to share a little bit of hope, joy, and anything that is positive through stories. My name is Shalini Bajaj Surve, and I live in the maximum city of Mumbai. I have a 20-year-old media career, after which I started a book-based subscription box for kids. COVID put a stop to that, and my natural progression moved towards storytelling. So from within the world of those books, I carried those stories out and started my professional journey just about 4 years ago. I'm a fledgling storyteller in this journey. And I volunteered with the Mumbai Storytellers Society for about 4 years, having conducted and participated in organizing 2 storytelling festivals. I can only understand or begin to understand how Herculean this task is. So a big thank you and a hat tip to Dr. Eric Miller, the entire team of Chennai International Storytelling Festival, Pratigya, Ambu, all of you all are brilliant. The 13th edition, and wow. So this is my debut, so to speak, at CISF. I will be sharing a personal tale, and I hope you like it. Haven't we all heard about superheroes? Mighty and powerful ones, like in the epics, in mythology, in folk tales, and now more recently to the Avengers and the Transformers. Well, I have not only met a superhero, I have lived with one. I have studied her, and today I would like to share her story with all of you. I would like to start my story by taking you back in time, not way back, but to the iconic year of 1947, when free India was born. Millions were celebrating and rejoicing. But on the other hand, there was an exodus of people who were being forced to leave their home, their land, their work, their family, their friends, and their world as they knew it. These religious minorities, fearing for their lives, took any means of transport possible, picked up whatever little belongings that they could, and tried to escape, with the only hope that they would survive and, if possible, start life afresh in another place. "Hey, who goes there?" asked a British guard as he moved towards a compartment in the train that was stationed at Karachi station in Pakistan. He entered the compartment and looked around. All that he saw were piles of furniture stacked tightly in the compartment. He looked around a little more. He didn't see anything. And he would have probably waited a little longer had it not been for the whistle. The train was about to leave. And so this guard got off the train. What he didn't see that day was a woman cradling her young 40-day-old daughter, hiding behind the furniture. What he didn't see that day was a mother gazing intently into the eyes of her young child. What he didn't hear that day was the loud drumming of her heart filled with fear. And what he didn't hear was a mother's fervent prayers for her daughter to keep quiet so that they could escape. The train moved and left the station. And this mother, Kalavati, along with her daughter and her husband, escaped or left behind her home in Sindh, Pakistan, to Gujarat, India. As she set foot into a new home, she said her prayer and whispered, Malika ji marzi, which translated means, it's all his wish. Years went by, and Amma, aka Kalavati, this was her superhero code name, performed many amazing deeds. And tales of her exploits did the rounds of the bylanes around her house in Surat. Women would whisper, did you know? Amma single-handedly made 8 kilos of papads and she put them to dry in the veranda. That's nothing. I saw day before yesterday, Amma has already made 10 jars of pickle and she has put it in the room inside. Very soon she'll start distributing it to the entire community. Last week, there was a wedding in the neighborhood. Amma went there. She made halwa for 100 people. And then she sang and she danced. How does Amma manage it all? Amma was indeed bestowed with superpowers. She was a nurse one day, a caregiver another. She was a midwife one day, a tailor on another. Her home in Surat was everybody's home. You could be the 4th cousin of a 5th cousin and come and tell her that, and she would let you stay with her. But despite these superpowers, Amma had a weakness, or so she thought. Back in the day, this was considered to be a stigma. Amma didn't have a son. And a lot of women taunted her for it. Amma, who will marry your daughter? She doesn't have a brother. Amma, who will take care of you when you grow old? All these taunts started getting to her. But Amma was not at an age that she could conceive, so she decided to adopt her brother's son. Her house was full of gurgles and laughter. This son brought her pride, joy. He was so naughty. And time went by until he turned 12. And he contracted typhoid. And nothing that Amma did, no matter how much she prayed, no matter what the doctors did, this little boy didn't survive. And he passed away at the tender age of 12. Amma was heartbroken. She was so pained, but somehow she gathered super strength from within to mask that pain, to mask that hurt. And life went on. Amma continued spreading her magic all around Surat. She got her daughter married to an engineer in Bombay and sent her away. Some more years went by. Amma happy in Surat and her daughter in Bombay. And many years later, Amma decided to come to Bombay to stay with her daughter. You know these superheroes? They wake up early in the morning. They have a very disciplined regimen. They work out, they exercise. They probably have almonds, milk, protein shakes. What criminal or villain will I encounter today? What would my strategy be to destroy all evil? That's probably what they would think. My superhero? She woke up early in the morning too, at 5:30 a.m. But she did nothing of the above. Instead, she would listen to devotional songs on a small Sony cassette player. Shri Radhe Govinda, मन भजले हरि का प्यारा नाम है, नंदलाला हरि का प्यारा नाम है, मन भजले हरि का प्यारा नाम है. And this would be the wake-up alarm for my brother and myself. We would listen to these bhajans and get ready for school. Now, my brother and I are separated only by 11 months. Great effort by my parents. And so we pretty much grew up like twins. Oh, love, playing, sibling rivalry, drama, the works. Outside the house, we were a team, a force to reckon with. But inside the house, our way of displaying affection and love to each other was a little different. If my brother would hit me once, I would very lovingly hit him, but with double the intensity. If I would push him just a little, he would shove me right to the other end of the room, lovingly, of course, and then would start the Mahabharat of all fights. Accusations would be hurled and tears would begin to flow. And before anybody else could intervene, Amma would come there and with a stick make just 2 taps on the floor. Tap, tap. And all the drama would end. That's how powerful she was. I remember when I was about 10 years old and my brother and I came back from school, we were just sitting down to have lunch. And my brother simply blurted out, "No, I am not eating this vegetable for lunch. I've carried it to school today as part of our tiffin. I'm tired of having the same thing morning and afternoon. I'm not going to be eating it." My mother was a teacher. So she woke up early morning and she packed our breakfast boxes. Invariably, she would make it in quantity so that we had the same thing in the morning and we had the same thing for lunch. And it was all fine till then, but on that particular day, my brother refused to budge. "Shall I make you something sweet?" Amma asked. "Of course," my brother said. And Amma went into the kitchen and she whipped out another superpower. Sugar-filled rotis or flatbread. This is the most incredible dish that my brother had tasted, and it was the most incredible dish that I have witnessed being made. Amma went into the kitchen. She started the gas. She rolled a roti, a perfect circle. And that is a challenge, I can tell you, out of experience. On that perfectly round roti, she sprinkled sugar, just the right amount. Yes, white, crystalline, refined sugar. None of the brown sugar, no jaggery, no nothing. She kept the pan on the gas and waited for it to heat. And in parallel, she rolled out another round roti, placed this on the previous one, and fused the edges. She then checked the temperature on the pan by moving her hand above it. And when the temperature was just right, she took this roti and placed it on the pan, without it breaking, without it tearing. You know, when sugar just starts melting and that gentle or that sublime smell of caramelization starts filling the room, at that exact moment, she would turn the roti, making sure that both sides were evenly and perfectly cooked. The crisp center with the soft, gooey sugar inside and soft edges. Oh, this sugar-filled roti was a delight to all the senses. It just melted in your mouth. My brother ate it and was overjoyed. And Amma's face glowed. She radiated so much light. She smiled 100-watt smile. She was so happy. Never have I ever tasted a sugar-filled roti made like that in my life. And no one in the family has been able to match it either. That's how amazing it was. By now, you would have guessed who Amma is. Amma is my grandmother. My cocoon, my safe place. And she had amazing superpowers. But wait. Aren't all grandmothers supposed to be superheroes? I would agree. But I still maintain that my Amma had exceptional superpowers. Why? Because Amma was blind. She couldn't see. She had come to Bombay to get treated for aggressive glaucoma, which was slowly taking away sight in one eye. And a freak infection took sight away from her other eye, so much so that they had to remove the eyeball. Pirate-spirited that woman was with a wink all her life. One night, she wanted to go to the bathroom. And she had a really bad fall. The doctors said they would not be able to operate on someone with glaucoma. And so they tried to straighten her leg using a cast. It didn't work. And Amma was left with a limp. This fierce, independent, amazing woman full of superpowers had to take the help of a walking stick. And that sound of tuck, 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 like a clock ticking, became her forever companion. None of this stopped her from sharing warmth, love, food. And I asked her, Amma, how do you do it, Amma? Malika ji marzi, she said, which translated means, it's his wish. Amma passed away at the age of 84, leaving behind a legacy. She will forever and ever be superhero Amma, the one who, despite all the darkness that surrounded her, carried within her a beacon of light and shared that warm glow with everybody around her. Thank you.
Wow, Shalini, I'm just speechless. A tight hug to you
Thank
and
you.
your Amma. So I'm really lost for words what to say because I'm getting so emotional listening to the story. It's so nice, like when you from the story of Regina, where she built a home, to the story of Amma who lost her home and then she rebuilt a home, and I would say a whole empire for herself. And until you told about, she couldn't see, I don't think any of us could see that coming at all. Especially when you're talking about the caramelized rotis. I literally wanted to have caramelized rotis. It was so vivid. The pictures were so vivid, and we could smell, we could feel that sugar melting on it, and we didn't see that coming. The visuals were so strong, and the pride. We can feel the pride with which you were telling the story, and we can realize how much you have adored your Amma. So I really like the fact Malika ji, the language I'm learning for the first time, but that will stay with me forever and ever. Thank you so much for that heartwarming story, Shalini. You made us all emotional.
Thank you, Ambu. Thank you.
Yes, and opening up to the audience. Let me remove my slide. Yes. Yeah, exactly. The story was so warm. I'm sure like each one of us could relate to some person in our life with whatever you share.
You know, Ambu, interestingly, when she came to Bombay, my grandfather gave a power of attorney to a kind neighbor and said, take care of our house. Okay. And well, as life plays out, the home was no longer theirs because he had transferred it to his name. And Amma and my grandfather stayed with us for the rest of her life. So she lost her home not once, not twice. But I think the beauty was she was never connected to, like Regina says, her own space. I think she just made her space wherever she went. She created a home wherever she went. And her way of sharing love was, I don't know, it was so simple. I mean, who would think that a simple sugar-filled roti would bring this kind of joy? So share anything simple, share anything that is not complicated. And I think that's pretty much what we need in the world today. Regina is right. We've just been seeing so much. Just share whatever little you can, whenever you can.
Exactly. Yes, Barry, go ahead.
Shalini, that was lovely. It was just so charming. And there was one thing I want to just recapture. I think when you told us that she was blind and you told us the details of that, and then you said something about a perpetual wink, that she always had a wink.
Yes.
And I thought that was just a lovely flip to that she's always
they
like winking at you.
Yeah. It's an absolute, like I said, she was a pirate, that kind of energy.
Yeah, okay, you did say pirate. That's what I thought.
Because, and she didn't have to she didn't mask it. She just wore it proudly.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you so much.
It was also lovely the way you used mother for your own mother and Amma for your grandmother. So initially it was like, okay, whom is she talking about? And then it was so clear because it was so clear in using the words, mother and Amma, and we could easily make that connect.
So I'm Sindhi, and my grandmother left from Sindh, Pakistan, like I said, during the partition. And a lot of words like Amma actually means an older mother, Adi means sister. A lot of words that kind of overlap with other languages as well within India. So that's another very interesting thing about the Sindhi culture. And we don't have a state of our own, but I think we spread the world around. And all that we carry is our stories and our language and our songs, and happily so.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Anis, you want to say something?
Thank you, Lavanya.
I really love the way, it sent tears down my eyes, honestly, the way you said it from your heart, and as if you were living the memory right now, even while you were sharing with us. And for me, also the big takeaway here was, one is, as women, I know that so many women, ordinary women inside the house, who are superheroes but are never spoken about. I know hundreds of them, but they just live and die without their stories being even mentioned, even recognized. So yeah, and I've seen so many of those women, and I could just for a minute feel that gratitude for all those women in my lives and around, who have silently died as superheroes, and also have, or sheroes, and have and also during this war and displaced time and the times that we are living in now, send us this message that it's okay. I mean, all of us are going to be okay in a certain way. Like, we don't have to be so worried about our children, our families, our houses, because things will fall in place, to just give that reassurance. So thank you so much for that early in the morning, something hopeful. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anis. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is indeed a story of hope, and that's all that I wanted to share. I just wanted to put her story out there. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. It's again a wonderful story, and again re-insisting surrender, the Malikaji mercy. I will remember that. Thanks so much for that lovely story. And now let's move on to the third storyteller of the day, and that is Meenu for us. And now Meenu is one name which was so easy for me, because Meenu is a name from my mother tongue, which literally translates into the eyes of a fish. I mean, the one who has eyes beautiful like a fish, which actually symbolizes the ease, or the ease with which a person can wade through all the difficulties and all the challenges. Having known Meenu personally, I know how seamlessly, how beautifully she moves through the different walks of life with such ease. So Meenu, I'm waiting to listening to your story. The floor is yours. Share about yourself and tell us a story.
Thank you, Ambu. Thank you so much. Namaste, namaskara, vanakkam. A very good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you from wherever you're connecting from. My name is Meenu Sivaramakrishnan, a professional storyteller, a performing artist, and educator from Bangalore, India. And Katha Galata is my storytelling initiative. To know more about what I do, I think for want of time, I'll just put the website on the chat. So feel free to go check it out at leisure. So before I begin, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Eric for creating such a wonderful platform and doing this grand month-long storytelling festival year on year. And now, yes, he has a wonderful team also that supports him. So, and I'm glad that I'm here and associated with CSF for the 5th time in a row. So thank you so much. So I would just like to give a heads up that this is a story, it's a fictional story written by one of India's celebrated writers called Munshi Premchand. It is, the story revolves around a game, an Indian sport. So introducing the sport, I'll just put the details on the chat. So in case you're not familiar, you can just go, just quickly read about it. And I will be telling this story in first person. So here I go. Hey, dandana dandana danda, sorgame enralu, adu nammura pola varuma. Ada ennadu enralu, adu nam naattu kidaguma. பல தேசம் முழுதும் விளையாடும் ஆட்டம் நம்ம ஊராட்டம் போல் வருமா? Even if it's called the heaven, will it be like our own India? Whatever games we may play, will it be like our own game? as I see the boys playing it, even today, I feel so excited. I get so thrilled and I just want to go join them and play it. There's no need of a court, a well-maintained field, or a net. Just 2 sticks, one small, one big. Gather a couple of players and that's it. You're all set to play the game. Yes, Gilli Danda. The ancient Indian sport. That's what I'm talking about. You know, Gilli Danda has been my all-time favorite. And the memory of it is one of the best childhood memories I've ever had. Getting up early in the morning, climbing up a tree, cutting the branch, making the gilli and the danda, the small and the bigger stake, the thrill, the excitement, the passion, the fielding, the striking, the fights and the skirmishes. My God. I just can't tell you. You know, it had all the sweetness of a candy and all the pleasures of a circus. Yes, circus. And, you know, I had this gang of boys. And in this gang, there was one boy whose name was Gaya. He must have been 2-3 years elder to me. Yeah, that's it. Just 2-3 years elder to me. But no matter how the small stick, that's called gilli, no matter how that gilli flew, he would just snatch it, just like how a gecko would catch a bug. And let me tell you, I did not know where he lived, what he ate, even if he had parents. But for sure, he was one to be our Gilli Danda club champion. It was once when Gaya and I were playing. Gaya was striking and I was fielding. Now I have to tell you, whatever strategies I tried, whatever tricks I did, even if it was not within the rule book, technically speaking, but still nothing worked. He would just not get rid of me until he finishes his turn completely. That was Gaya. Courtesy, persuasion were just pointless. I gave up. I could not take this anymore. So I began running towards my home. But Gaya, I told you, right? He was not someone who would give up. And so he too began running behind me. He began chasing me and soon caught up with me. He raised his danda and said, You will not leave until I finish my turn. But you're striking the whole day and I will be fielding the whole day. Yes, of course. But I'm not your slave. I won't do it. I'm going off to my home. You can't stop me. What? Are you kidding? This is my turn and I will finish it. Then give me back my guava that I gave you yesterday. What? Guava? The guava that you gave me yesterday, I ate it then and there. Then I don't know all that. You take it out of your stomach and give me. If you don't give me my guava, then I am not giving your turn. You see, I thought I had some justice on my side, but it was Gaya I was talking to. He immediately grabbed my shirt, pulled me closer to him and said, You will not leave until you let me finish my turn. Of course, he was not going to let me escape. In fact, I was slapped, I was whacked by the danda on my back, and I started crying. But I have to tell you, this weapon of crying, even Gaia could not counter. And he fled off. I wiped my tears. I even forgot about that smack that I received. I went home smiling back. You see, I am this police chief's son. But I did not go about complaining about this, I did not talk about this to anyone at home. After this, my father got transferred and we moved out of town. Time just flew by. Not one, not two, but 20 years passed by. I finished my engineering graduation. I took up a job and then on job, I came to the same town. And I was lodged at the post bungalow. Just the sight of that town arose such sweet childhood memories in me. And I immediately decided to take a stroll in the town. I just wanted to go find all my friends, give them a tight hug. But I have to tell you that everything in that town, except for the name and the location, had changed a lot. I could hardly recognize anything in that town. And with all these thoughts, I was just strolling when I came by a group of boys who were playing it. Yes, no prizes for guessing it. Gilli danda, of course. And I just completely forgot myself. I completely forgot who I am. I completely forgot that I'm a working man, somebody with such a great job, invested in privilege and influence and whatnot. I just walked up to the boys and called out to them and said, "Son, do you know anyone by the name Gaia here?" One of the boys came forward and said, "Is it the tanner Gaia?" Well, I did not know exactly, but I just nodded my head and said, "Will you be able to bring him to me here now?" So the boy went off. And after some time, I saw him coming back with a tall devil of a man. And as they walked closer, I recognized him instantly. It was Gaia, of course. I just wanted to run that very moment, go to him and give him a warm, tight hug. But then I stopped myself. I thought, maybe I shouldn't do that. He came closer and I said, "Hey, Gaia, do you recognize me?" Gaia bowed, saluted me and said, "Sir, of course. Why would I not recognize you, sir? How have you been?" I said, "I am doing fine, Gaia. I am the district engineer and I have come here on work." "Sir, you have always been the smart one." Leave all that. You tell me, Gaia, have you been playing gilli danda? "Sir, how can I play the game? Taking a break from this meager earning job that I'm doing?" "Oh, then come, let's play it today. Just you and I, huh? In fact, you remember, I owe you a turn. You can take it today. Come, let's play. Just you and I said. For a moment, Gaia hesitated, and then he agreed. Petty laborer that he was, and I was a big officer. There was so much difference between us now. He was for sure embarrassed, but not more embarrassed than I. No. It was not because I was going to play Gaia. It was rather because our game would become a spectacle, for the people there. And they would all gather around, a crowd there will be a huge crowd. And when there is crowd, there is no fun, right? So the two of us agreed that we will go somewhere far, outside the town. And there, when there are no people around, we will play the game. And so we walked up to the post bungalow. I took my car and then I began driving towards that deserted field. I was going through intense emotions within me. But Gaia thought all this that was happening was just a joke. There was complete silence, just like this. And then I was the one who broke the silence. I said, Gaia, tell me the truth. Did you ever miss me? Sir, who am I to miss you, sir? It was my destiny that I could play with you for a few days. But now, you're completely out of my league. I felt quite sad. And I said, but Gaia, I missed you all the time. You know the way you used to hold the danda and swing it? You remember that? Sir, don't remind me of that. Those were the times when we were young. But Gaia, that was my sweetest childhood memory, you know that? The thrill that your game gave me, that thrill, I don't get that thrill anymore with all this prestige, the honor and the wealth that I have today with me. And the way you used to swing the danda, hit the gilli. Wow, let me tell you, that has kept my heart young even today. I confessed. As we reached that land, that playing field, which was totally uninhabited in all directions. And then we quickly got down the car, we climbed the tree, broke a branch and then made the gilli and the danda, the small and the large stick, and then we were all set to play. I kept the gilli in the small pit. I took the strike first. And then with all my power, I hit it. It went flying and flying and flying. Went flying right in front of Gaia. And then down it fell on the earth right behind him. It was the same Gaia to whom the gilli, no matter how it flew, would just go right into his hands, as if the gilli only wanted to go into his hands. It was the same Gaia. It was the same Gaia, no matter how the gilli was, old, new, crooked, straight, small, big. It would go directly into his hands as if Gaia had magnets in his hands. It was the same Gaia. But today, it seemed like the gilli did not love him anymore. So I held my strike and I went on striking. And poor Gaia was fielding all the time. Look, I tried to cheat. I tried to break all the rules. But Gaia, poor fellow, he was completely out of touch. Looks like he did not say anything at all. And then finally, when it was Gaia's turn to strike, the game was even more different. It was the same Gaia whose aim would be so accurate. But today, the gilli would just not find the danda at all. It was the same Gaia. Finally, after half an hour of struggle, when it finally stroked the danda, I tried to bluff and I said, no, it did not touch. It missed by a hair, but it did not touch. No. And he agreed. The next time again, when the danda was struck by, when the danda struck the gilli, Gaia began to scream out loud, I heard the crack, I heard the crack, I heard the crack. But wait a minute. What if I befool him again? I can try it. What is there? What is there to lose? Worst case, I will have to field for some more time. Anyway, nightfall is going to happen soon. I can use that excuse and get rid of it. And so I did not react at all. With all the indifference that I can show, I said, you heard the crack? But did you see it hit the danda, hit the gilli? But I heard the crack. You heard the crack, but it need not necessarily be the sound because it hit the gilli. It could have even hit the rock. When those words came out of my mouth, I myself was shocked. Because telling that kind of a truth a lie is like calling a day a night. But I did it. And poor Gaia, he agreed. He said, sir, I think you may be right. Because if it had hit the gilli, it wouldn't have made such a loud sound. After all this deception, I only felt pity on Gaia. And now with all my big-heartedness and generosity, I decided to give him strike back. I said, you strike. But poor Gaia, within moments, he got struck out. And then he ended up fielding for hours together. This went on. And then finally, it began to get dark, so we decided to call it a day, and we were leaving the ground. When Gaia stopped and said, sir, we are playing a match tomorrow. All our friends, so at least some of our old friends you can find. We would like if you could also join. We can have it as per your schedule, he said. I agreed. I said I'll come and watch the next day evening. So the next day evening, I arrived at the ground in my car and the game was about to begin. I sat in the car and I was just scanning the ground. Some of my old friends were there. I could recognize them. But most of them who are going to play the game were all young. I did not know any of them at all. And as I was doing that, suddenly I heard a fierce sound. I turned in the direction of that sound. And there was that tall devil of a man, Gaia, holding his danda raised. And all the heads were looking up. As I too looked up, squeezed, strained my eyes. Oh yes, it was the gilli. The gilli was flying higher and higher and higher. I had to really strain my eyes because sometimes I could not even trace the path. It was going higher, soaring as if it was going to go and kiss the sky. And then slowly it was descending. And you know what? All the young boys who were playing the game, they all went running behind the gilli so that at least one of them can somehow manage to find the gilli. I was dumbstruck. If God forbid, if this Gaia had played with me yesterday, I would have for sure ended up crying. It was the same Gaia. But he did not. Because he would have definitely turned me into a hamburger. But he did not want to do that. He wanted, or he let me play my game. He let me keep my self-respect. I tricked, I cheated, I broke all the rules, almost all the rules of the game, technically speaking. But he did not show even an iota of anger. Now I realize I could earn Gaia's kindness, respect, but not his fellowship. Back then we were equals. There was no disparity. But now, after having played the game with him, I was just worthy of his pity. He did not consider me an equal partner. And now, he has become a bigger man. And I, the smaller. Thank you.
What a story, Meenu. Subtle emotions of human beings expressed in a very, I loved your modulations and expressions as always. And when you're talking about, how you were, celebrating Gaia like a hero, it just reminded of the fact that each one of us, knowingly or unknowingly, I would say, is a hero in somebody else's life that we never realize. And like how Meher has rightly put in the chat, the innocence of the childhood, when it goes away, it's adulterated by other emotions when you get into adulthood. The pictures were like, especially when you were tracing the gilly when it was flying during the match, it was so perfect. You could see the gilly flying, like, how you watch a cricket match when the ball is flying and all. So it kind of, we felt we were there in that place where the match is happening. Very beautifully narrated, a very beautiful story. Thank you so much, Meenu, for sharing that. Okay, opening it to the audience.
Thank you.
May I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Meenu. I love Premchand, and I've read this story many times, but to see it performed, I didn't know if you were a singer, dancer, actor, or storyteller, or all in one. It was so beautiful, and a child. So I could just see the child in you, and yeah, it was mesmerizing. That's all I have to say. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Anis. Thanks a lot.
And it's so relatable when you get something, not because you actually deserve it, but because of pity, how it puts you down and puts the other person who has been doing that at a very high pedestal. Nice. So what made you choose this story, Meenu?
Well, for me, personally, it brought back a lot of childhood memories. While it is Gilli Danda here, for me, it was this game called Seven Stones that we used to play. Yeah, so I'm sure many of us here would have played that game. So immediately I could relate to all that, the protagonist, the main character was going through, the way the fights and skirmishes, the excitement and all that. So it really brought back all that, and that, that thing of complaining, no, it did not touch, it did not hit my leg. So basically you'll have to, throw a ball and hit the leg of the opponent team's player. So it's something like that, to put it in brief. So when we are trying to run away, so we used to say, no, 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 it did not hit my leg, it did not hit my leg. So all those, brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. And that's the first connect that I had with this story. And I felt the audience can have that kind of experience as well. And I thought I shared. But yeah, it definitely has a lot of layers. But this was one very strong connect, or the first connect that I had with the story, because for me, a lot of Premchand stories were very, to be honest, a lot of Premchand stories were very difficult to understand. I found it difficult because he's primarily a Hindi writer. It's not because of the language, but also the content per se. I found a lot of stories very difficult to understand, and this is one of the few stories that was like immediately I could relate to, and I thought it will be a nice platform to share.
It came out very well, especially when you narrated it in first person. That created an even more stronger connect.
Yeah.
In first person. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you so much, Meenu, for sharing that lovely story of hope. And, again, for some reason, it stayed, you are a hero in somebody else's life, unknowingly. For some reason, that is something that came out so strongly for me in the story. Thanks so much, Meenu. And now let's move on to the next teller for the day. And we have Nilguen.
Yes.
Am I your name right? Yeah. So
can you hear me? Can you hear me? All good?
Loud and clear. Very clear, Nilguen.
Okay. Yeah, Nilguen is my name, and I don't know whether you researched Nilguen and found the the meaning of it. Did you?
No, I was going to say that your name was a challenge for me. Wikipedia didn't have an answer for your name. And so I was going to say, seems like your name, you're so unique, you're so rare, and you're one of your kind. So please, Nilguen, share the meaning of your name. Please tell us the story. Yeah.
Do you know, it's really that's a little story on its own, but I will make it brief. For many, many years, I said my name means, it's Turkish, it's from Turkey. So I'm half Turkish, half German. And I said many times, my name means bright as the sun shines, bright as the day. Wonderful. Until my husband, who is more of a researcher than I am, because I was more in the romantic part of my name, and he researched it, and on Google, as you do nowadays, it said it means actually blue as the Azuran Ocean. So, so it's very different to what I thought it was, but it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful name, and yeah. And so, but also not an easy name because, wherever I am, I have to at least spell it 3 times before people understand. Thank you very much for giving me a opportunity to bring a story today. I'm a storyteller. I've been touring New Zealand. I live in New Zealand in Pura Bay, which is on the South Island of New Zealand, and it's a beautiful property I share with other people. And right here at the beach. Today was a very hot day, believe it or not. It's February, I know, and it was very hot. So I have a little motorhome, and if Regina, I know she has left because it was past her bedtime. But if she would listen, I would agree with her that once I got Gypsy Rose, I call my motorhome, an old motorhome, that serves me to take me from place to place in New Zealand to tell stories. And so I indeed, my own, my wings, my little cocoon, which is very helpful. So I've been doing that for about 9 years. I'm also a therapist, a counselor, and a group facilitator, which I love very much. Facilitate women's retreats and so on. But yes, so I'm bringing today a mythological story. And it's a story that when I heard it first, and that was when I listened to Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Este's compilation of stories of the old woman, the crone, the archetype of the old woman. This story, when I listened to it, really stood out. It actually hit me right in the heart, I must say. And so it is not my interest to analyze why, because just that it did touch me to that degree is reason enough to bring it to you today. And I believe actually it is a story that right now, in this time we're in, needs to be heard. It has a big meaning for me. So please enjoy. Once upon a time, there was a queen and a king, and they have wished for a child for a long time. But as the years passed by, and no child arrived. The queen in particular grew often very sad and was overcome by depression and despair. And on one of those days where she felt particularly sad, she decided to lift her mood a little and walk into the nearby forest. And when she walked into the forest, she suddenly saw a rose bush right in front of her. A beautiful, magnificent rose bush. And its fragrance was incredible. So she was very drawn to it and came closer and looked at the rose bush. And to her surprise, she saw that one of the buds was particularly big, huge. So she bent down and took a sniff, and then realized that within the bud there was a little child. So she took the child carefully out of the petals of the rose bush and held it close to her heart. And to her surprise, yes, it was a little boy whose skin was as soft as the petals that had held it. And so she rushed back to the palace and showed the little boy to her husband, the king. Look at this. This is a child, our child. Look, my God, what a gift. And the king was equally overjoyed. And from that day on, the king and the queen raised this child, nurtured, loved this little boy as much as they could. And of course, eventually, he grew up and he grew into this happy and strong young man whose mother loved him more than she loved her own life. One day, his father, the king, said, "My son, it is time for you to come to me to the war." And when the queen overheard this, she got alarmed and pleaded with her husband, "Oh no, please, don't, husband, don't, not our son. Can't you remember how preciously he was received? He's a miracle. He's magic. He's different. Please, husband, please don't take him to the war." But no matter how much the queen pleaded, the husband insisted, "No, my wife. He will not be a real man unless he has witnessed a war." And so the father and the son, a few days later, rode their horses into the war zone. And the father, the king, with a little stone in his heart, said, "My son, it is tradition that you accompany me into the war. And whatever will be, will be." And when they arrived at the battlefield, it was a horrible sight. Horrible. Screaming soldiers everywhere, lots of blood and gore, and so much death, death everywhere. And then to his horror, the son saw how his father was struck by the lance of the enemy, and he was killed and pinned to the ground. And for the first time in his life, the son pulled his sword and raised it over his head and charged his horse, galloped towards the enemy. He was full of rage, and he waved his arm, his sword over his head, full of rage and intent to revenge his dead and kill the enemy. Yes! Suddenly, his arm froze, and to his astonishment, it turned green, leafy green. And then he saw a few thorns appearing. And then, to even more surprisement, he saw blossoms, rose blossoms everywhere. And not only were they growing on his arm, they were moving all along, up the sword, right to the tip. Green leaves and rose blossoms. And in that moment, the young man remembered where he had come from. And in the fragrance of the rose, he fell into a dreamlike state and had a deep sense of his strength and a certainty of peace. So slowly he lowered his sword, and all the rage he had just felt fell off him when he dropped his sword to the ground. And in that moment, he was overcome by a sense of wholeness that was beyond description. And so he turned his back to the enemy and in sorrow staggered away from the battlefield. But the young soldier who had killed his father sprang up, charged behind him, and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Why? Why aren't you a man enough to revenge your father? Kill me, come on, you must kill me. You must revenge your father, the king. Don't dishonor me, please, man." And the king's son, turned to the young soldier and said, "I am not who you think I am. I am not made of what you think I am. I have just remembered who I am." And the soldier couldn't understand what this young prince was telling him. And so he continued pleading, "Come on, please, do it fast. Just kill me, just over and done with. Please don't dishonor me. Do it, revenge your father." But again, the young man said, "I have remembered who my true mother is. And can you not smell that the fragrance of the rose is much stronger than the fragrance, the smell of blood?" And then he offered his arm, his hand, to the young soldier who by now had fallen onto his knees, tears streaming down his face, as the king's son had spoken aloud what he himself had felt many times in the darkest corner of his heart. And so he took the king's son's hand and raised up. And both rode their horses away from the battlefield in different opposite directions. But both paths, both paths came back to a river. They both led to the same river, where these two encountered each other again. And they looked at each other and then agreed to wash off the blood of each other, to wash the blood off. And they also agreed that from now on, they would travel together, telling tales of the time of the war, but more so, telling tales of the time of the rose. Always remember who you are, and always remember where you come from. Thank you. I forgot to say that it is called The Rose Bush Warrior, or it's a Romanian story originally, and it's a bit different in the Romanian version. And there it's called, I think, The Rose Prince. So sorry, I forgot to tell you. So, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. The story of Regina, where she built a house, the story of Shalini of rebuilding houses, and that of Meenu, where the protagonist goes back to his hometown to realize, and now the story of who realized his home at a war field. So it's like, all the stories are like, a place where you find yourself. And I love the way, Nilguen, you completed by saying always know where you come from and who you are. I think the most difficult thing for all of us, but once done, it makes a huge difference. And I love the way when you said, the smell or the fragrance of the roses are much stronger than the blood. If only the whole humans can understand this, so then the world will be a much better place. Thanks for sharing that lovely story with us. And it's filled with so much of positivity. Yeah, it's very beautiful, very beautiful story.
Thank you.
Yeah, now opening to the audience. Spotlighting so that we can see everything. We do have stories, of course, in our Indian legends, and I'm sure in other countries too, where there were kings who saw the blood in the war field and their hearts changed and they started following the path of peace. So, and when you were telling, when the young warrior says, "Kill me, take revenge," and when our hero says, "No, I'm not going to do that," it reminded me of the saying, forgiveness is the worst or the best punishment one can, punish the other.
And also showing your back to the enemy and walking away is, especially for boys and young boys and men, it has always been symbolized as cowardice. And to break this thought process, you can be weak as a man, as a boy. You can cry and you can decide not to fight. That for me is like, it strikes a personal message, because I work on those kind of stories where I want to break these kind of stereotypes that are associated with it. So,
me too.
And I also have recently, we went on a ladies' brunch where a lot of women were talking about war situations coming up and the fear that their children are now not gun trained as it used to be here in Germany, where I live right now, in the past, and this fear as to what will happen, if things come up. So there was this big contradicting ideas. Should we have trained or shouldn't we, just in case they are prepared, because now they will not be able to do it in case they have to step up to it, or some of the worries. And the other part of them were like, we rejoiced at the fact that this is not being done anymore here. yeah, so there was this fear, and at the same time, yeah, the joy that the boys didn't have to be trained. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody else was Shalini. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shalini.
Nilguen, firstly, just like your name, you're living in New Zealand, South Island, surrounded by blue waters, the bluest that one could ever
That's
see.
right.
So, bless you, and thank you for that story. I just wanted to share that today, now more than ever, the value of human life. You know, they said that they would not share the kind of stories of the fights that they've had aboard, but they would share different kind of stories going forward. That's the value of human life, which we don't seem to realize now. What one can do, and it supersedes revenge. It just has to supersede revenge and going at each other's throats. So thank you so much for that wonderful message that is truly relevant and much needed in today's day.
Much needed. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Nilguen. This is Lavanya from Bangalore, India.
Hello.
So I think it was a wonderful story. And to me, it just came out as, the power of choice that one has in reacting to any situation. It's something that we have to keep reminding ourselves time and again, right? I mean, even though we talk about, I have the power of choice, stories like this keep telling you that any situation in life, choose the most difficult thing to do. I mean, it would have been very easy for him to just take this word and, but what was difficult was to just walk away. So to choose something that is very difficult, my God, I think all of us will mull over the story. I mean, when Ambu opened the floor for audience, there was complete silence. I think all of us were mulling over the story. Thank you so much. It's such a treasure that you have brought today for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the first time I heard it by Carissa told, I cried. I remember I was driving my motorhome through the streets of New Zealand, and I cried, and because it just touched me so much. And to remember who I am, most of all, I'm a soul, and we are all connected. Why would I kill my brother, my sister? Why? For what? We are all connected, isn't it? Remember where I come from, And so, yes, it's a story deeply from my heart, and it's beautiful that it's so well received. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nilguen. Thank you for such a positive story and spreading happiness amongst all of us. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Now we move on to the final teller for this show, and that is Seema. Let me spotlight Seema. Okay, well, Seema, Wikipedia told me Seema means boundary or limit, and you have to tell whether that's right. So, but all I have heard about Seema is her creativity has no boundaries at all. And that's what I've heard about her. Of course, I haven't had the privilege to watch you in person perform, but now I'm looking forward to watching your story. So I have seen lots of videos of hers where she uses lots of properties, puppets, and I would really say that your creativity crosses boundaries. And I'm looking forward to listening to you for the first time. Seema, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself and tell us a story.
Thank you, Ambu. Seema, yes, does means boundaries or limitless, or you could take it, it was also probably, if you add it with Seema Devi, it will probably mean goddess, Parvati. But yes, I would like to keep it simple as limitless or limit, that is the thing. So as Ambu said, my name is Seema Karanth, and I am a storyteller hailing from the beautiful city of Bangalore. I share stories to children and adults and basically anyone who is willing to give me their time and space. And I have to tell that I have been a storyteller for the last 10 years or so. But before that, for many, many years, I worked in an airline industry. So from wings of flight to flight of imagination, that has been my journey. So ladies and gentlemen, in true airline style, fasten your seatbelts and let's get ready to take off. The year was 1948, 3 years since the World War II had ended. Germany had been divided into 4 pieces like a pie. by the countries that had defeated Hitler's army. Soviet Union, then governed by Stalin, had control of East Berlin and East Germany, while the West Berlin and the western part of Germany was handled or controlled by United States, Great Britain, and France. Things went well for a couple of years, but on the fateful day of 24 June 1948, Joseph Stalin decided to take control of not just East Berlin, but West Berlin as well, with the intention of taking over Berlin, Germany, and finally entire Europe, bringing it under his communist regime. The world looked aghast, but were helpless. They couldn't afford another war, getting involved in another war so soon after World War II. And so what would they do? Stalin had blocked all roads, all railroads, all canal routes leading to West Berlin, cutting off West Berliners from all kinds of essential supplies. No food, no electricity, no heat, no clothing. And that is when the British and the Americans came up with this incredible idea of a sky bridge. So you see, they had 3 air corridors, which were around 20 miles wide, still left with them to utilize. And they used that to build an incredible sky bridge where they would send airplanes every 3 minutes, 24 hours a day, 365 days. It went on for 15 incredible months, just so that 2.2 million people of Berlin could be fed, could be kept alive. This was history. Now for my story. My story is about an innocent young 7-year-old girl by name Mercedes. Mercedes lived with her mother and 4 little chickens in a small house with a garden and a courtyard. She lived with 4 chickens as her pets, and every day, day after day, she would rush into the garden, place her hand underneath those chickens, just hoping and praying that there would be eggs. Please, 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 God, let there be eggs today. Let there be eggs today, she would say. And just like the day before, just like the previous day and the day before and the day before, the nest was empty, but for a single small egg. Trying not to cry, she fed those chickens single worms, for they were precious. She worried as to what would happen, gazing up at the sky where the planes thundered. You see, she lived very close to an airfield, Tempelhof airfield, and the flights taking off and out, where the perennial sound of thundering aeroplanes scared those chickens. They rushed towards shelter, molted, and refused to lay eggs. And Mercedes knew that eggs were important. Her mother had told that at times of war, an egg was more precious than gold. And so, wondering how she would face her mother with that single egg, she dragged her feet towards home. But surprise of surprise, her mother was reading a newspaper and laughing. Now, come on, who reads a newspaper and laughs? Not then, not now. But her mother was so amused reading an article that she was laughing. And so she went near her and asked her, Mom, what is it? Her mother told her about an article about an amazing gentleman, an American pilot called Gail Halverson. Gail Halverson was called as the chocolate pilot or the candy bomber, for he had taken to bombing chocolates and candies and gums to the children of Berlin. It all happened one day when he was landing, and near the hangar, he saw children standing near the fence looking at the takeoff and the scene. It was a perennial sight, for always children would be there. And when he saw those children that one fateful day, he sensed that they were hungry. He sensed that they were hungry not just for a day, but they'd been hungry for days. And so in desperate attempt to do something, he put his hands inside his pocket and found 2 slivers of gum, 2 bits of gum. He tore it into 4 pieces and gave it to 4 lucky children, not before the other children grabbed the foil, smelt it as if they had tasted heaven. unable to control himself, unable to stop himself, he promised those children that the very next day he would bomb them with chocolates. He would shower them with chocolates and candies and gums, knowing fully well that he had no permission, knowing fully well that he probably did not have access to even those chocolates or anything else. He went back to his room that night and took out all the possible chocolates and candies from him, from his colleagues, whoever had it. Took out white handkerchiefs, tore it into bits, made it into parachutes. And the very next day, as promised, bombed the city of Berlin with a rain of chocolates. Not just once, but thrice. Soon the children of Berlin heard about it. Soon the newspapers read all about it. And that is exactly what the mother was reading about. He had told the children that when he would drop it, he would wiggle the wings, and therefore he was also called as Uncle Wigglewings. Entire America, it is said, when the news spread over, his bosses were initially annoyed, not because he had thrown the chocolates, but because they were not informed. And soon it became like a mission where children from all over the world were sending chocolates and reams of white cloth so that it could be made as kerchief. And when Mercedes heard about this, she knew that this was the solution to all her problems. And so the very next day, Mercedes and her mom walked towards the airfield, and along with it, so many other children gazed up at the sky. First, there was that gust of wind, and as they looked up, there was this marshmallow clouds hitting at them, each child lifting their hands, trying to grab that single piece of candy, and Mercedes did exactly that. And just as she grabbed it, a little boy came and pushed her away and grabbed the chocolate and ate it immediately. Mercedes would never forget that look on his face. She went back home crying. She went back home worrying for the two most important people in her life. She knew that her mother cried herself to sleep, for you see, her father had not come back from war. And she was afraid that if the chickens didn't lay eggs, they would soon be on her dinner plate. And so she worried about it as she went home, and then did what half of Berlin, or rather half the children of Berlin, did then. Using the moon as the lamp, not even telling her mother, she secretly took out a piece of paper, some crayons, some pencils, and wrote a letter to Lieutenant Gail Halverson. My dear chocolate pilot, my name is Mercedes and I live near the Tempelhof airfield. My chickens seem to think that your airplanes are some kind of chicken hawks and therefore run to some shelter, molt, and refuse to lay eggs. And eggs are very important to us. It is very important to us and it is a big problem. But you know, if you could only drop some candies, all will be well. It's okay if you scare them once. Your little friend, Mercedes. Now, children all over Berlin were writing to Gail Halverson, and it was so difficult for him to personally reply to each and every letter, but he read them all, and each and every letter touched him. There were letters that made him laugh, there were letters that made him cry, letters that made him laugh so much that he cried. Especially a letter by a young 9-year-old called Peter Zimmerman, who had given a map of the place where he lived with explicit directions. Just take the second turn after the canal, and then there's a bombed house. That is where I stay. I'll be there at 2 p.m. Drop it. Knowing that it was impossible to find a house with this kind of instructions, Gail Halverson had actually sent a box of chocolates by post, but not before he got a second letter from Peter, asking him what kind of a pilot was he and how did you win the war anyway. And so it happened that many months later, as he was going through one letter after another, he lingered on a letter written by this small girl who lived with 4 chickens in a garden, white chickens in a garden. And as he read that letter, the words, the eggs are important. It's a big problem. But if you could drop the candy, all will be well. Your little friend Mercedes touched his heart. Blinking away tears, rubbing his forehead, he wondered and he thought, he knew that what those eggs and that chicken meant to that little girl. The sweet hope of candy and the sweet hope of that girl was as precious or as delicate as those eggs, and as precious to him as the chickens were to her. And again, realizing that there was no way he could find a house with 4 chickens, he just sent a box of chocolates by post. And when Mercedes got it, she was delirious with joy, jumping up and down as only a child could, opening the box and looking at all the various colors, the sizes, chocolates, candies, gums. Oh my God. And she just ripped open a chocolate, put it in her mouth, and relished every bit and every morsel as if she was in heaven. And when she opened her eyes, she saw her mother blinking away tears, but pointing it out to her. There was something else in the box, and she saw a letter. The letter said, "My dear Mercedes, I do not fly over your house every day, and hence decided to send you a box of candies by post. With what little I have sent, I hope it brings you little joy. Your uncle, chocolate uncle, Gail Halverson." Little joy, that was a day that she would never forget, a day that would be in her memory for the rest of the life. Dark clouds soon passed away, and it was time for Gail Halverson to return back to the United States. And as he boarded the stairs of that aircraft one last time, he remembered each and every child, Mercedes, Peter Zimmern, and so many others, and hoped and prayed that his little act of giving those 2 gums had made their lives a little better, a little sweeter, a little brighter. But that's not the end of the story. 22 years later, by a strange coincidence, Colonel Gail Halverson, yes, now he was Colonel Gail Halverson, was posted back to Germany, was posted back to Berlin and Tempelhof Airfield. 2 years later, he was invited over for dinner by a couple he did not know. He accepted the invitation and was greeted warmly by a young woman who was a pilot herself with 2 small children. Post-dinner, she opened a small box and gave it to him. Inside it was a well-worn letter, a letter that looked as if it had been read and reread so many times. And as he opened that letter, it read, "My dear Mercedes." Yes, Mercedes was so inspired by Gail Halverson that she had gone on to become a pilot herself. With tears in her eyes, she looked at him and said, "Do you even remember me? Do you even know the impact your actions had? Do you even know what it meant for the children to see this rain of chocolates and candies?" It was not about chocolates. It was not about candies. It was about hope. It was about hope because we had been told that the Americans were the enemy. So it was about getting good from bad. And do you know even how many children did not even open the chocolates? They would keep it under their pillows, just sniffing it. It was a symbol of hope. Gail Halverson choked. He was not a man of many words. He didn't know how to express what he had felt, what joy he had got by giving just those 2 slivers of gum. But he always remembered the look of hope in that child. He felt it was a hope for a better tomorrow, and that is why he had started this whole thing. And so he did what he did best. He took the letter, he took out a pen and wrote on that very same letter, "My dear Mercedes, here's wishing you the very best in whatever you do, and many more sweet things to come." Many more sweet things to come. And that's exactly what happened. Friendship bloomed between Mercedes and Gail Halverson. And they went on, their families got acquainted and they went on to meet many, many times. In fact, it is said that Mercedes Wild went on to become an unofficial brand ambassador for Germany, a friendship ambassador from Germany to the United States. And today, as Mercedes walks under a free Berlin sky, that sweet memory of that gift soars in her heart, just like the silver plains of hope. Thank you for listening. This is a true story adapted from a book called Mercedes and the Chocolate Pilot as a part of history. And Gail Halverson went on to live for 101 years and passed away as recently as February 16th, 2022. It is said that on his 100th birthday, during COVID, there was a shower of chocolates. They candy bombed his house. A tribute to a man who meant so much, who did so much, and inspired so much more. Thank you for listening.
Wow, Seema, I really love how the tribute. It's so touching. Such a story with such a deep message told in such a light, flowing way. We really enjoyed so much listening to the story, and the hope. I know, surprisingly, all the stories today, some way or the other, they relate.
Yes.
And now, this one, I would say, holding the home for the chickens. That was what Mercedes wanted to do. And, I would say, hail Gail Halverson. Sorry.
Gail Halverson. Yeah.
What a man, right? So the small acts that we do, how they create such a huge difference in the lives of different people. Very nice listening to the story, and all the stories today are giving us a lot of hope and positivity. It really feels so nice to start a Sunday listening to all these positive stories. Sharing that beautiful story with us. Yeah, opening up to the audience.
Thank you, Seema. Beautiful story, beautifully told. I always do this song. Sorry, there's hair in my mouth. Gotta get rid of this. Sorry. This is the song that I always do with my children. This suited very well to this story. I just want to share it. If all of the raindrops were candy bars and gumdrops, oh, what a rain that would be. I would go out with my mouth open wide singing, ah, 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 ah. So, I was like, I've used this song so many times when this shower happened. I was like, oh, this is the best place. So, that imagery just came to my mind, and I thought I should share this song. Thank you so much. It was beautiful. I was also thinking that it might lead to the story of Mercedes and Benz. How the name Mercedes.
No, that's a different one.
And then it was a completely different story. Yeah. So very beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, a lot of hope.
And I was thinking, here you are from Germany, and there are so many from the United States, and here I am sitting in Bangalore in India and sharing a story that is weaving it all together. So, yes.
Yeah, Seema, beautiful story, absolutely. And again, of hope. And what strikes me is that it never requires much, but it requires, a little bit like in my story, some waking up and wanting with all your heart to do good. And it doesn't require much to change the world in a way, and that one person can do it. Often we feel, or I can feel overwhelmed and feeling like, what can I do? And facing the world and the troubles, and what can I do? I can do. And if it is candy from a plane, if that's available to me, then that is perfect. So it really brings it back home to me, that message, do little things that I can do, I'm able to do, or sing that song, Anis, and sing it with your full heart. And I come from Germany, from Hamburg, so I know the German story, and how beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. I can visualize, how the kids will feel when you have chocolate bombs falling from, and especially when you discussed about the marshmallows and children grabbing, It was very cute and it's very touching. What a way to end the event.
And also the fact that they had it, but many of them didn't even eat it. They would keep it under your pillows, that really kind of, had it chokes you, right? Something very, very precious. Yes.
When you mentioned, they would keep it under the pillows and sniff it. So that's like, that's a reminder of hope and faith.
Yes.
And mountains and crosses.
Yes.
Fantastic. So thank you so much. So we come to the end of the session. So from the story of building a house to rebuilding the house and going back to the house and staying, holding on to the house and finding the home. So it's like all the stories today, I'm sure, makes all of us feel at home and relish our homes and where we come from. Thanks for all the beautiful stories. And we have many more events coming up. The very next event is at 2:30 Indian time. That will be a workshop by Bhanumati and followed by many other events for the day. And we have 2 more weekends of the Chennai Storytelling Festival. So we hope to see you all in all of the remaining events. And again, once again, thanks to all of you for joining today and also for the lovely stories. Thanks so much. See you. Bye-bye.